So normally when I do my record pick of the month, I choose between the records I bought that month, which is usually at most 3, usually 2, sometimes 1. You know, not a big amount. But I've kind of got a bit crazy in the past month, buying a total of 14 albums. So rather than picking my favorite, I thought I would go through what I bought this month and what I like about each album. So let's take a look. Starting off a very busy month for buying vinyl, and in fact it was my pick of the month last month, is the Blues Brothers original soundtrack. Unfortunately, it came from the US, so the sticker that it comes with is slowly coming off, which I'm not a big fan of, and the plastic sleeve that it came in is starting to tear away already. But luckily the record itself came intact. The inner jacket sleeve that it came with unfortunately was a bit damaged as well, so it wasn't a total loss because the record itself was intact, and that was what I really wanted. And it has an amazing soundtrack because this is one of my all-time favorite movies. Yeah, plain and simple. Moving on, I picked up a reissue. This is Frida's Something's Going On. Now, some of you might go, who's that? Why is it a pink girly cover? You know, it seems kind of odd to have that kind of a thing. Well, for those that don't know, Frida is one of the singers in ABBA, or was at one point. She left, I think they all eventually separated, and this is from 1982, at a point in time where she was going through a divorce. And so her favorite album to listen to at that point in time was Face Value by Phil Collins. Now you see where we're going with this. She invited him to essentially produce the album. So he took his band, not Genesis, he took the band he would use for his own solo career, and his engineer that he had been working with since Peter Gabriel, which I'll actually get to that in a second. He brought him along, Hugh Padgham, and they essentially crafted an album that plays very much like a Phil Collins album. It sounds fantastic, but it's just done by a different vocalist. Now, my favorite thing about this album, and forgive me for pinching the vinyl, is it comes on this sort of violet disc. It's sort of translucent, it's not transparent, that's for sure, but I think it looks absolutely breathtaking, and it's probably the main reason I picked up this album. I heard that they were reissuing 3 of her albums, and this being one of them. This is the only one I'm familiar with because of who worked on it. So I just had to have it because it's simply fantastic. Also came with a free download code. Don't really care either way. It was just a nice touch from Universal. Moving along, Peter Gabriel's third album, also commonly referred to as Peter Gabriel Melt, because his face is melting, obviously. Nothing fancy about this one, it's just a black disc. Now, this is the first album to feature engineer extraordinaire Hugh Padgham. And this album also features, to an extent, Phil Collins. At the time, he could not afford his US band, so to speak. So when it came time to make the album, he enlisted the help of Phil Collins again, who would then play on the drums. But the thing about this, and you hear it on the very first track of this album, Intruder, no cymbals at all. just drums in the simplest form. And this led to Hugh Padgham and Phil Collins getting creative, and together they ultimately created the gated reverb drum, which a lot of people would definitely know from In the Air Tonight. You know, that da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, you know, that sort of sound. That was created here in, I believe, 1980, I think is the year this came out. Yeah, Games Without Frontiers, that's 1980. So that obviously translated into 1981, where he released his first album, and it had this sort of huge, expansive, loud, reverbed drums. And it was unlike anything we'd ever heard. It was the sound of the 1980s. It was that new sound. And it was simply fantastic. I love it. Everyone still loves it to this day. Anyway, next we have Yes, Going for the One. Now this one, I got half off. I went to my local record shop earlier this month, and they were having a whole bunch of different records on sale. So this is a limited edition picture disc. Ooh, there we go. Limited edition picture disc. This is the album to feature the return of Rick Wakeman. This is from 1977. It was just a reissue by Rhino, who does a lot of reissues for these kinds of albums. And both sides are, of course, they have some sort of art related to the album. Obviously the cover on one side, probably the back cover on the other. I'd never seen the original artwork. Not a lot of tracks on this album, 5 tracks in total, one of them being, of course, 15 minutes long, Awaken, which is a really interesting song, but that just shows how interesting Anderson's work is. Overall, though, I love this album. This album is fantastic, and it was a steal considering $29.99, and I got it for 50% off. So I really can't complain there. What a steal! Moving along, we got another picture disc, another half-off picture disc. Now this is a single. This is George Michael's Freedom 90. This is a 12-inch picture disc single that I got, again, 50% off, $25. So really great steal. Plays at 45 RPM, only has 2 tracks. It has Freedom 90 and then Freedom 90 Back to Reality Mix, which, I mean, it's like the I Can't Dance remix. It's like cyanide. It's best in small doses. But Freedom 90 itself, amazing song, and this is a one-of-a-kind picture disc that you probably can't find much of anymore. Unfortunately, the jacket is perishing, but I'll probably get something better to put it in at a later date. So, next up from that same record shop is Robert Plant's The Principle of Moments. $9 used, but it was pretty damn good condition for used. Other than the jacket's just a little rough around the edges, but it's not terrible. A simply fantastic album. This is his second solo album, if I remember correctly, from 1983. So this is an original Canadian pressing from 1983. Features the wonderful song Big Log. I think a lot of people will know that from GTA 5 on Los Santos Rock Radio. And once again, playing only the drums this time, the wonderful Phil Collins. In fact, if you look at the inner sleeve, somewhere on here, there he is. Right there is Mr. Sir Phil Collins. Well, not Sir, but whatever. A lot of his work in my monthly haul here. So great album. I love it. I'd never heard the whole album through, and you know, I like Robert Plant, I like Led Zeppelin, so I took it upon myself just to say, screw it, we'll pick it up, and we'll see how good it is. Moving along, we've got Christopher Cross, Another Page. This features the single All Right, very popular song by him. $2.99. This I picked up at a record shop downtown. I was in the market. You know, it was $3. I was like, you know, not a bad selection, not a great selection, but you know, why not? Huey Lewis in the News, Sports. This is an original pressing from 1983 here in Canada. It's sports. What more do you want? I mean, you've got I Want a New Drug, If This Is It, Heart and Soul, good song. You know, Huey Lewis, it's that band that you think of like, you know, they must not have had a lot of popular songs, but then you kind of go back and it's like, no, they actually pretty much did. They were synonymous kind of with that mid-'80s period, and Back to the Future kind of helped with that, but, you know, fantastic album, regardless. True classic up next, Billy Joel's Piano Man. I have a remaster from Music on Vinyl, who did my Blues Brothers, and one of the ones I'll show later, of The Stranger, but I didn't have Piano Man. And I saw this for $6, you know, an original. Mind you, this is the CBS version, not the direct from Columbia version, but nonetheless, it's an original Canadian pressing from back in the day. I can't remember exactly what year, and they didn't bother to print it, but, you know, live and learn, I suppose. Fantastic album. Sounds great. Another classic, I don't know if you would call this a classic, this was more on their decline, but Brother, Where You Bound, Supertramp, great album. I think everyone loves Cannonball. Crazy if you don't, but that was really the main reason I bought this, because I have favorite tracks by Supertramp, and I already own 3 of their albums that contained a lot of their big hits, and this one contains a pretty big hit. $7. I mean, the jacket isn't in the nicest condition, and someone wrote on it VG, but other than that, record's in great shape. I haven't played it yet, but I'm sure it'll sound fine. It looked fine. Next, Alan Parsons Project. I love Alan Parsons Project. I only started listening to them this year, but I've instantly fell in love. Like, without a doubt, one of my favorite bands now. This is their first album, Tales of Mystery and Imagination, from Edgar Allan Poe. Now, this cover, it even says here, this album has been previously released in a jacket bearing different artwork. So, while this is an original album from 1976, it is not the original artwork. And they had the original artwork available in store, but it wasn't in a good enough shape as this was, so I couldn't justify it. Especially if it's just the same album. There's nothing different. It's the 1976 mixes, 1976 mixes. So it has none of that Orson Welles voiceover stuff added in yet that you got in 1987. So I didn't see any point in getting one cover or the other. But fantastic album. The System of Dr. Tar, Professor Feather, amazing song. The Raven, with some great vocoder work by Alan Parsons. It's an album that you can really get lost in. And it's another one of those original pressings from the era. So, you know, it's pretty cool to own a piece of history. An album that's now, I believe, 41 years old this year then. Next up, Dire Straits, Money for Nothing. So, this is another 12-inch single. This isn't Brothers in Arms, which is the album that it originates from. This is just a full-length version of Money for Nothing on a 12-inch disc. And on side B, you get Espresso Love live, so it comes from Alchemy Dire Straits Live. And then on the back, you get a list of their tour dates, which I thought was pretty cool. This was apparently part 2 of the tour, so you can see they came to Ottawa on July 24th and 25th of, I believe, 1985. Doesn't say the year on it, but I think Brothers in Arms came out in 1985, so that would make sense. Great song by Dire Straits, probably one of their most popular ones, and it even says it's a limited edition, so, you know, to have something like this, it wasn't in rough shape. The jacket was, you know, a little beat up, but I'm not too concerned about the jacket as much as I am concerned about the music itself. $4 for something that I really don't think you're gonna see a lot of anymore, so I figured why not. Next, this is another repressing. It's an original album from '77. The Roaring Silence by Manfred Mann. Now, the keen eye would know that Roaring Silence comes on a brown cover normally and doesn't feature this bar at the top, but it says this album has been previously released as without the selection Spirit in the Night. So this is a modified version of the album. It even says contains Spirit in the Night and Blinded by the Light. Blinded by the Light was already there, but I guess they just wanted to point that out, that such a popular song was on here. But yeah, it comes with Spirit in the Night. You listen to this album, it's just classic prog rock. It's a great album. Do I care that it's not the actual original album? Not entirely. I mean, I'm just happy to have Blinded by the Light on vinyl, so, you know, that's all that really matters. Finally, this was the highlight of the month for me. This is Better Call Saul, the original television soundtrack for season 1. Now, there's something a little interesting about this one. I was browsing my Amazon wish list one night, and this was on it, and it usually floats around $50 to $60, and it was on for, I believe, $20.37. So I said, yeah, I'll buy it. This steal. And I did. I got it 2 days later, because I have Prime, of course. And to my surprise, I knew that there was a super deluxe edition that came with a bunch of extras and a special colored disc. And it said on the Music on Vinyl website that they were sold out completely of any copies of that. And to my surprise, I got this in the mail 2 days later, and I read exclusive super deluxe limited edition of 1,000 copies. This is number 217 of 1,000 records. Comes on exclusive Chicago sunroof colored 180 gram vinyl. Somehow, Amazon still had some of these super deluxe editions in stock, and I happened to catch it when the price was so low I could not say no. Turns out they have both versions listed on their website, but this one floats at the higher price, the other one floats at about $30. So this one, for some reason, was at $20. Next day, it was back up to something like $55. So I got, you know, the deal of a lifetime getting this. And hopefully I can do the same thing with the original score for the first 2 seasons that they put out. It comes on 2 red discs. So if I could get that, that would be an absolute steal. But like this is really cool because Better Call Saul is probably one of my favorite TV shows. I loved Breaking Bad, and this is just, it blows my mind that I have this. So, you know, it comes with, you know, great songs. Coffee Cold, if anybody who watches the show, they'll know, they might not know the songs by name, but they would know them if they heard them where they go in the show. You know, you have Coffee Cold, you've got the Better Call Saul by Junior Brown song. That's a really interesting one. That one's on YouTube, so if you haven't seen that, I would definitely recommend checking that out. Address Unknown by the Ink Spots. When we first start the show, that's the first thing you see, and it sounds magnificent. This album was specifically, these tracks were specifically mastered for this album. Again, you've also got Find Out What's Happening. So when Jimmy's looking for the Kettlemans, when Jimmy's looking for the Kettlemans in their own backyard, essentially, you hear Bobby Bear and the Hillsiders do Find Out What's Happening. Great song. If there had to be one album out of my 14 and I somehow decided to pick up all at once, essentially, this would be the pick of the month, because it's my favorite show, and it's an exclusive that you won't find anywhere else anymore. And to have something like this is truly special. But anyway, that's it. That was every record I bought from July 18th up until just a few days ago in August here. So that's going to do it for this video. If you happen to like it, do hit that like button. If you aren't subscribed, please subscribe, and I will catch you in the next one. Thanks.